Okay, this video is designed to explain to you the light-dependent stage of photosynthesis. There are two main stages to photosynthesis. There is the light-dependent stage, which is shown on the left side of this diagram, and the light-independent stage, which is shown on the right. This video is going to be focusing on the light-dependent stage. The light-dependent stage takes place on the thylakoid membrane, and light energy is absorbed by these things called photosystems, which are embedded into the membrane. These photosystems contain a variety of pigments which absorb different wavelengths of light. You have accessory pigments like carotene and xanthophyll, and at the primary pigment reaction centre found at the base of the photosystem you will have a chlorophyll A molecule. Light energy that is absorbed by the photosystems is used to combine ADP and a phosphate group to produce ATP. And this process is called photophosphorylation. And there are two types of photophosphorylation. There is cyclic photophosphorylation and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. This diagram here shows the thylakoid membranes. On the one side we have the stroma, and on the other the thylakoid space. We have the two photosystems embedded in the membrane. We have photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. On the right hand side, those blue blobs, that represents the electron transport chain. We also have an enzyme associated with photosystem 2. And light energy is absorbed by both of the photosystems. This animation explains what happens in cyclic photophosphorylation. It involves photosystem 1. When light energy is absorbed by photosystem 1, the electron in the chlorophyll A molecule at the base of the photosystem is energized. It's so energized that it actually leaves the photosystem and is passed through the proteins of the electron transport chain. And they use some of the energy that the electron had to pump hydrogen ions across the membrane from the stroma into the thylakoid space. This creates a proton gradient. Now the hydrogen ions want to diffuse down this gradient from the high concentration to the low concentration, but the only way they can diffuse across the membrane is by going through ATP synthase, which is there on the right. The hydrogen ions, when they move through ATP synthase, the force of them moving through is used by this enzyme ATP synthase to combine ADP with a phosphate group to produce ATP. This is photophosphorylation. Why is it cyclic? Well, the electron that left the photosystem in the start will return to the photosystem. This animation shows what happens in non-cyclic photophosphorylation. This time both photosystems are involved. When light is absorbed by the photosystems, just as before, the electrons at the base of the photosystem become energized, and they will leave the photosystem and they will pass through the proteins of the electron transport chain. And the proteins will take some of the energy that the electrons had and use it to pump hydrogen ions across the membrane, just like before. You'll notice that the electrons from photosystem 2 have replaced those that left photosystem 1. But we still need to replace the electrons that left photosystem 2. Where do these come from? Well, these actually come from the splitting of a water molecule. Now the enzyme, which is associated with photosystem 2, splits the water molecule into an oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms. The hydrogen atoms are further split into electrons and hydrogen ions, and it's these electrons which will replace the those that left photosystem 2 in the first place. The oxygen atom will combine with another oxygen atom to produce O2, and this is where the oxygen in photosynthesis actually comes from. Right, so they're the electrons that have come from the splitting of the water molecule from photolysis. They have replaced the electrons that left photosystem 2. As you can see, we have a proton gradient that has built up, just like before. Okay, these hydrogen ions will move through ATP synthase, down their gradient, and in the force of the protons moving through ATP synthase is used by that enzyme to combine ADP and a phosphate group. Right, the electrons, which left photosystem 1, we still have to deal with those. Well, they will join with the hydrogen ions to make hydrogen atoms, and these will be taken by NADP. As NADP is absorbing the electrons, it is said to be reduced. Okay, it's now called reduced NADP. So, in summary, photosystem involved in cyclic is just photosystem 1. In non-cyclic, both photosystem 1 and 2 are involved. Is ATP made? In both cases, yes, it is. Is reduced NADP made? Not in cyclic, but it is in non-cyclic. Where does photosystem 1 obtain its replacement electrons from? Well, in cyclic photophosphorylation, the electrons that originally were emitted from photosystem 1 will return to it. In non-cyclic, it will be the electrons emitted from photosystem 2. Where do photosystem 2 obtain electrons from? Well, in cyclic photophosphorylation, photosystem 2 is not actually involved. In non-cyclic photophosphorylation, it's from the photolysis or the splitting of water.